everyone! So in this video we are going to start going over the upper appendicular. Specifically in this video we're going to talk about the scapula, the clavicle, and the humerus. Alright, so have out your diagrams and we'll start going over these. So if you look at the scapula here on the top right of this page, right now we're looking at an anterior view. That's important because this is going to be the region that is kind of in the center of our bodies. Like when you're looking at somebody's back and you can see the outline of their scapula, that's the posterior portion. So this side is going to be the more interior portion of the scapula. So when we are starting here at A, this is going to be the, pointy spot at your shoulder near the deltoid. It's what we refer to as the acromion process. And keep in mind, process is talking about an extension of the bone. B, right here, is what we refer to as the superior border. Right, it's one of the borders of the scapula. It's on the top side. The top side is referring to superior. C is another extension or process, which is the coracoid process, not to be confused with the coronoid process of the mandible. This is the coracoid process of the scapula. The coracoid is more anterior than the acromion, right? So when you, if you ever palpate in somebody's shoulder, the process that's more posterior is the acromion. The coracoid is more anterior and a bit more inferior than the acromion. D, we're looking at this flat region here. This is the glenoid fossa. Fossa is referring to a smooth, flat area. And to continue with discussing a smooth, flat area, E is referring to the subscapular fossa. So if you're looking at the anterior view of the scapula, that large fossa is going to be subscapular fossa. From there, we're going to go ahead and label some more of the borders. The side with the acromion and coracoid is lateral, so that means that this border is going to be the lateral border. The opposite of that will be the medial border. And where the two meet down here, this is our inferior angle. Okay. That's it for our anterior view. So let's go ahead and take a look at the posterior now. One of the simplest ways that you can figure out if you are looking at the anterior or posterior view of the scapula is to look for this structure here, J. Okay. J is the scapular spine. Hopefully you can read my writing. I know it's kind of small here. All right. So just like our spine is on our back or at our back, the scapular spine is also the back of the scapula. The scapular spine is going to follow up into what becomes our acromion process. If we think back to our directional terminology, superior, meaning above, is how we're going to get the name of this fossa here. It is the supraspinous, in other words, above the spine fossa. Similarly to that, I'm going to jump down to K. We are now looking at below the spine, or infraspinous. And again, it's a smooth, flat area, so that's going to be a fossa as well. You can kind of see the coracoid poking through here. In this view, it's definitely obvious that the coracoid is more inferior than the acromion. And again, we've got this smooth region, the glenoid. Same with our borders. Now this side here is going to be our medial, so we have our medial border. F is going to remain labeled as our lateral border. And H is our inferior angle. Last one for the scapula. On this page, we're looking at a lateral view. Again, A is our acromion. C is our coracoid. D is our glenoid fossa. We've got our lateral border. And our inferior angle. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at how the clavicle is going to fit in with the scapula. All right. So here we've got our scapula labeled. You can see that the scapula is far more posterior. The region of the clavicle that's going to be attached to the sternum is conveniently named the sternal end. B, on the other hand, is going to fit right in here with the acromion, so this is our acromial end. And lastly, this little bump, we tend to call these structures tubercles. This is the conoid tubercle. All right. And while we're looking at this view, I just want to mention it's just below this area, below the acromion and kind of flush against the glenoid fossa, that the head of our humerus is going to fit in. All right. So if we go back up here, this glenoid fossa, that's where the head of our humerus is going to rest against. So let's go ahead and take a look at the structure of the humerus. All right. So I mentioned that when we have a bump, we tend to call it a tubercle. So this bump here, which is on the lateral side, as well as here, this is lateral as well. This is our greater tubercle. And the head, which is B, the head is what's going to clue you in on this is the medial side. Okay, the head is what's going to fit into the scapula. The part that kind of distinguishes the head from the rest of the humerus is what we refer to as the neck, the anatomical neck specifically. And if you look just beside the anatomical neck, you can see this slight tubercle here. It's much smaller than the greater tubercle, and that's how it's going to get its name, lesser tubercle. Then we've got this space in between these tubercles here. That is going to be our intertubercular groove. Sorry, I know that's kind of a tricky word to say. Intertubercular groove. That is 2 words. I just kind of wrote close together there. And then here, this region here is now what we refer to as the surgical neck. If we move down just a bit, we have this region here, which is our deltoid tuberosity. This is where we're going to have an attachment of the deltoid. We then are going to come to H, this region here. Actually, I'm going to jump down to I. This rounded region is what we call a condyle, and I is on the lateral side, so this is going to be our lateral epicondyle because it's above this condyle, epi meaning above. So here's our condyle. Epi means above the condyle. This one is specifically lateral. And L here is our medial epicondyle. I wanted to skip H because we've got these epicondyles here, and H being above them or superior to them is what we refer to as the supracondylar ridges. When we get to J, this is our coronoid fossa. All right, so this is a divot, but it's quite smooth. And then we have K, which is our olecranon fossa. This is going to be a region that the olecranon of the ulna fits into so that we can make that hinge joint at the elbow. And then M, which is on the lateral side is the capitulum, and N, which is on the medial side, is the trochlea. All right, and that's it for scapula, clavicle, and humerus.